Ethan Cade woke to the sound of a heartbeat that was not his own. It echoed softly through the room, steady and calm, coming from somewhere above and around him. For a long moment, he thought he was still drifting in the space between dreams and death, the place where memories blur and pain feels far away. Then the ache arrived, deep, heavy, and undeniable. His chest felt like it had been folded inward. His left leg burned with a dull, pulsing heat. Breathing took effort, as if the air itself had weight. So, not dead. That was disappointing, but also encouraging. His eyes opened slowly. The ceiling above him was smooth and curved, glowing with a pale silver light that shifted almost like it was breathing. Thin lines of blue energy traced across it, pulsing in quiet rhythms. This was not any medical bay he had seen before. Not Earth-built. Not even Coalition standard. Yeah, Ethan whispered, his throat dry. Definitely not home. A soft chime sounded to his right. He turned his head and immediately regretted it. Pain flared behind his eyes, sharp and bright, but he forced himself to focus. Standing beside a floating medical console was someone tall and very much not human. She wore a fitted medical uniform in deep blue, the fabric smooth and strangely elegant, with faint patterns woven into it that caught the light when she moved. Her skin was pale, almost porcelain, but not fragile-looking. Her ears swept back slightly from her head, subtle but unmistakable. Her eyes were a rich copper gold, reflective and sharp, like they missed nothing. An alien nurse. Well, that explained a lot. "You are awake," she said calmly. Her voice was smooth, translated perfectly by the implant humming softly behind Ethan's ear. "Try not to move." "I'll do my best," Ethan replied. "But no promises." She studied him for a moment, her gaze flicking to the monitors hovering around his bed. Symbols and data streamed past, far too complex for him to understand. Then she nodded, as if confirming something only she could see. "You survived hull breach, decompression, and internal trauma," she said. "Your species is persistent." "That's one word for it," Ethan muttered. "Stubborn works too." Something flickered across her expression. Not quite amusement. Not disapproval either. Something restrained. She stepped closer, her movements precise and controlled. Thin beams of light scanned his chest and limbs, warm but not uncomfortable. As she worked, Ethan noticed details he probably shouldn't have been focusing on. How the light reflected off her uniform, how the blue fabric contrasted sharply with her pale skin, how calm she seemed for someone treating an enemy species. "Where am I?" he asked. "Medical sector of the Aurelian Station," she replied. "You were recovered from a disabled human vessel drifting near restricted space." "Ah," Ethan said. "So I crossed a line." "You crossed several," she said simply. That sounded about right. She reached toward his arm, adjusting a band of shimmering energy wrapped around his forearm. The pain there dulled almost instantly, replaced by a gentle warmth. Ethan let out a slow breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Whatever that is," he said, "I'd like to order 2 more." "This is a regenerative stabilizer," she replied. "Your biology reacts unusually well to it." "We get that a lot." She paused, her eyes narrowing slightly as she looked at him. "You are not afraid?" Ethan shrugged as much as his injuries allowed. "I was. Then I woke up. Now I'm just tired." That seemed to satisfy her. She continued working in silence, the soft hum of alien machinery filling the room. Ethan watched her while pretending not to. It wasn't curiosity born from fear. It was something else. Wonder, maybe. He had spent most of his life on the edge of human space, hauling cargo, fixing broken ships, surviving places humans were never supposed to settle. Aliens were not new to him, but this was different. This wasn't a trading post or a tense negotiation across a table full of weapons. This was vulnerability. She was close enough now that he could see faint markings along her neck, subtle and elegant, almost like natural patterns rather than tattoos. Her uniform fit her perfectly, not in a decorative way, but like it was designed to belong to her. And before his brain could catch up, before caution, diplomacy, or common sense could intervene, Ethan spoke. "You look incredible wearing that." The words hung in the air. The effect was immediate. The alien nurse froze. Not hesitated. Not slowed. Froze. Her hand stopped mid-motion above his arm. The soft blue glow of the medical field flickered. Even the quiet hum of the machines seemed suddenly louder by comparison. Ethan frowned. She straightened slowly, far too slowly, as if every movement required deliberate control. Her copper-gold eyes widened just a fraction. A faint color rose along her neck, spreading upward toward her cheeks, visible even beneath the station's neutral lighting. She did not look at him. She turned away. Her steps were quick, clipped, and unmistakably tense as she crossed the room. With a sharp gesture, she deactivated the medical console and moved toward the exit. The doors slid open at her approach. "Wait," Ethan said, confusion cutting through the haze of painkillers. "I didn't mean." She was gone. The doors sealed shut behind her with a soft hiss. Silence returned, broken only by the steady beeping of the monitors. Ethan stared at the empty space where she had been, his brow furrowed. "Okay," he murmured. "So that went bad." He replayed the moment in his head, searching for the mistake. The words were harmless. Honest. Humans complemented each other all the time. Even aliens, sometimes, depending on the species. He hadn't touched her. Hadn't leered. Hadn't said anything crude. And yet she had reacted like he had crossed some invisible line. Minutes passed. Then more. Another figure eventually entered, a different alien, broader, with darker skin and eyes like polished stone. This one didn't linger, didn't speak more than necessary. The care was efficient, distant, and cold in comparison. "Where's the other nurse?" Ethan asked. "She will not be returning," the alien replied flatly. "Did I offend her?" The alien paused, then gave Ethan a long, unreadable look. "You did something far worse than that." Ethan swallowed. "That's not comforting." The alien said nothing more and left. Alone again, Ethan stared up at the glowing ceiling, his mind racing despite his exhaustion. Somewhere in this station, a single sentence had caused a reaction strong enough to remove a trained medical professional from her duties. A compliment. He didn't know it yet, but that moment, the honest, careless truth spoken without fear, had already begun to ripple through alien systems built on rules, restraint, and silence. And humanity's greatest weapon was never strength or technology. It was sincerity. Ethan did not see her again for a full rotation cycle. Time on Aurelian Station did not move the way it did on human ships. There was no sunrise or sunset, only a gradual shift in lighting tones meant to keep multiple species from losing their sense of biological rhythm. The ceiling above Ethan's bed slowly transitioned from pale silver to a softer blue, signaling what passed for night. He slept in fragments, drifting in and out as machines hummed and unfamiliar medicines stitched his body back together molecule by molecule. Each time he woke, he half expected to see her standing there again. Each time, he was wrong. Instead, others came. Different species. Different faces. All efficient. All distant. None of them met his eyes longer than necessary. None of them spoke more than required. The warmth that had filled the room when she was there was gone, replaced by something colder and sharper. By the second cycle, Ethan noticed something else. People were watching him. Not openly. Not in a way he could call hostile. But when he was moved through corridors for scans, he caught glances from passing station staff. Curious looks. Uneasy ones. A few that carried something close to disbelief. Word had spread, though he had no idea what word it was. He finally got an answer from someone who didn't mean to give one. The alien was small and narrow, with translucent skin that revealed faint pulses of light beneath. A medical technician, judging by the tools floating beside them. They adjusted the field around Ethan's injured leg with careful precision, their movements almost nervous. "You keep looking at the door," the technician said suddenly. Ethan blinked. "Didn't realize I was that obvious." "You are," they replied. "Humans often are." "That's fair," Ethan said. He hesitated, then asked, "Can I ask you something?" The technician paused, their internal light flickering faster. You will ask regardless. True. Why did my nurse leave? The first one. The technician's hands stilled. For a long moment, they said nothing. Then they leaned in slightly, lowering their voice as if the walls themselves might be listening. You spoke to her without knowing what you were saying. That's kind of my specialty, Ethan muttered. But what did I actually do? The technician studied him, searching his face for something. Finally, they sighed. She is Andalai, they said. Her people do not separate appearance from identity. Ethan frowned. You're going to have to explain that. The technician hesitated again, then continued. To an Andalai, clothing is not decoration. Color is not preference. What they wear reflects who they are, what they have chosen to be, and what they are permitted to show. Okay, Ethan said slowly. So the uniform is not just a uniform, the technician interrupted. It is a declaration. Ethan felt a slow chill crawl up his spine. When you said she looked incredible wearing it, the technician went on, you were not complimenting fabric. You were affirming her essence. Publicly. Directly. Without shame. Ethan swallowed. That still doesn't sound bad. The technician gave a strange, flickering smile. It is not bad. It is dangerous. Before Ethan could ask what that meant, the technician finished their work and moved away, clearly done with the conversation. The explanation stayed with him long after they left. That night, Ethan lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He replayed the memory again, her stillness, the way color bloomed across her skin, the way she fled as if remaining would cost her something precious. What had it cost her? On the third cycle, she returned. Ethan sensed her before he saw her. The room felt different again, quieter somehow. The machines dimmed their glow as the doors slid open. She stood just inside, hands folded neatly in front of her. Same uniform. Same deep blue. But something about her posture had changed. Where before she had moved with practiced ease, now there was tension, as if every step had been rehearsed and reconsidered. I will be overseeing your care again, she said. Her voice was steady. Her eyes did not meet his. I'm glad, Ethan said carefully. I was worried I messed up. That earned him a sharp glance, quick, instinctive, and gone just as fast. You are ignorant, she said. Not malicious. I'll take that, Ethan replied. It's kind of my brand. She approached the bed, activating the monitors with controlled gestures. Up close, Ethan noticed the faint tremor in her fingers. Barely there. But real. I did not leave because I was offended, she said, still focused on the data. I left because protocol required it. What protocol? Ethan asked. She exhaled slowly. Andalai medical doctrine prohibits emotional destabilization during care. And I destabilized you. Yes. I'm sorry, Ethan said immediately. I didn't mean to. I know, she said. Her voice softened despite herself. That is what makes it difficult. She finally looked at him then. Really looked. Her eyes held something new. Not just professionalism or restraint, but conflict. You spoke without calculation, she said. Without intent to gain advantage. Without fear. That's just honesty, Ethan said. Exactly, she replied. She adjusted the stabilizer on his arm, her touch careful, deliberate. Among my people, such honesty is reserved for binding declarations. Ethan's heart skipped. Binding, how binding? She hesitated. The faint color returned to her cheeks. It implies recognition, she said quietly. Acceptance. That you see someone as they truly are and choose them anyway. The room felt suddenly very small. I didn't know, Ethan said. I know. Silence stretched between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Outside the room, unseen by Ethan, station systems flagged irregular data patterns. Cultural anomaly alerts cascaded through administrative channels. Observers took notice. Committees convened. Because something unprecedented had happened. A human had spoken a truth without understanding its power. And in doing so, he had cracked open a system built on control, restraint, and unspoken rules. The Andalai nurse straightened, her composure returning piece by piece. "You will recover," she said. "Your species always does." "And you?" Ethan asked gently. She paused at the door. "That," she said, without turning around, "remains to be seen." The doors closed. And somewhere deep within Aurelian Station, the first quiet discussions began, not about Ethan's injuries, but about humanity. The change did not announce itself with alarms or declarations. It began quietly. Ethan noticed it first in the way security drones lingered a second too long when he was transported for scans. In the way conversations stopped when he passed through certain corridors. In the subtle recalibration of his room's observation fields, now tuned not just to his vitals, but to behavioral markers he suspected were not standard for injured patients. Someone, somewhere, had decided he was no longer just cargo pulled from a wreck. He was a variable. The Andalai nurse, her name, he had learned from a passing technician, was Celera, continued overseeing his recovery. She remained professional, precise, controlled. But the ease she once carried was gone, replaced by something tighter, more deliberate. They spoke little, but when they did, it mattered. "You are being discussed," Celera said during one of his therapy sessions. Ethan winced as he flexed his healing leg. "Let me guess. Not in a good way." "In a complicated way," she replied. "That's worse." She adjusted the gravity field around his knee, easing the pressure. "The council has questions. Cultural ones. About a compliment. About intent," she corrected. "And sincerity." Ethan let out a slow breath. "You're telling me no one here believes humans can be honest without an angle?" Celera's eyes flicked to him. "Can they?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Sometimes we don't even know why we say things. We just do." That answer unsettled her more than any lie would have. Later that cycle, the questions became official. 2 representatives arrived. Tall, angular beings with layered ceremonial markings across their chests. Their presence shifted the room's atmosphere instantly. Authority had weight here, and they carried it well. "You are Ethan Cade," one said. "I've been called worse," Ethan replied. Celera stiffened, but the representatives merely studied him. "You spoke an uncalculated affirmation to an Andalai medical officer," the other said. "Explain." Ethan considered lying. It would have been easier. Cleaner. He didn't. "I thought she looked good," he said simply. "So I said it." Silence followed. "You expected nothing in return?" the first asked. "Correct." "No social leverage?" "No. No claim." "No." The representatives exchanged a glance that carried more tension than words. "This behavior is statistically improbable," one said. "Yeah," Ethan replied. "That's us." Celera watched the exchange with careful stillness. She saw something the others didn't, or perhaps refused to. Humans did not optimize honesty. They leaked it. The representatives left with more questions than answers. That alone was enough to trigger concern across the station's governing systems. Because civilizations like theirs were built on predictability. Humans were not. The shift came days later, when Ethan was finally cleared to walk unassisted. As he took his first steps down a public corridor, a minor incident occurred. A service drone malfunctioned, dropping a power conduit directly into the path of an Andalai child. The crowd froze. Protocol dictated waiting for automated safety systems to engage. Ethan didn't wait. He moved. Still not at full strength, still healing, he lunged forward, yanking the child back just as the conduit slammed into the floor. Pain ripped through his leg. He collapsed with a sharp breath. But the child was safe. The corridor erupted into noise. Security arrived. Medics rushed forward. The child's guardian stared at Ethan in stunned silence. "You could have waited," an officer said sharply. "Systems would have intervened." Ethan grimaced as he was lifted onto a stretcher. Yeah. But what if they didn't? That question echoed far beyond the corridor. Footage spread. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was irrational. A human, injured, unarmed, with no obligation to act, had risked himself without hesitation. Again. The council convened in full. Celera was summoned. You are compromised, one voice accused. I am informed, she replied. You defend him. I observe him. You feel. Celera lifted her chin. Feeling does not negate clarity. But doubt had already crept in. Because what she felt was not confusion. It was recognition. Humans did not fit into the frameworks the galaxy relied upon. They did not assign value carefully. They did not ration sincerity. They did not treat truth as a resource to be controlled. They spent it freely. And that made them dangerous. Ethan recovered more slowly after that setback, but something else accelerated. Understanding. Celera visited him late in the cycle, when observation was minimal and protocols looser. She stood beside his bed, hands clasped behind her back. You are becoming a problem, she said quietly. Ethan smiled tiredly. I get that a lot. They do not know how to categorize you, she continued. You destabilize systems simply by being genuine. That's kind of depressing, Ethan said. You'd think honesty wouldn't be so scary. It is, Celera replied, when it cannot be controlled. She hesitated, then did something Andalai were never supposed to do. She met his eyes fully. When you spoke to me, she said, you reminded me of who I chose to be, not who I was permitted to be. Ethan said nothing. I do not regret leaving, she went on. I regret that I had to. A soft alert chimed, someone approaching. Celera stepped back, her composure returning. But the damage, or perhaps the change, was already done. The council had their answer now. Humans were not just resilient. They were catalytic. They did not conquer by force. They altered the rules by existing. And for the first time in a very long time, alien civilizations were afraid, not of human weapons, but of human truth. By the time Ethan was cleared to leave the medical wing, Aurelian Station was no longer pretending he was ordinary. The clearance itself was unusual. Human patients recovered, yes, but rarely this fast, and almost never under this much scrutiny. His file had grown thick with annotations, cultural flags, and cross-departmental comments that used words like unintended influence, behavioral contagion, and social destabilizer. Ethan didn't see any of that. What he noticed was how people reacted when he walked past. Not fear. Not hostility. Uncertainty. Aliens who had spent their entire lives mastering control, restraint, and layered meaning did not know how to stand near someone who spoke plainly and acted without permission. Some avoided him. Others watched him carefully, as if waiting to learn what honesty looked like when it wasn't hidden behind ritual. Celera escorted him personally the first time he stepped into public space without restraints. You are being monitored, she said quietly as they moved through the corridor. I figured, Ethan replied. Hard not to notice the drones pretending they're decorative. They are not pretending, she said. They are unsure. That made him smile. The incident that followed was not planned. Those were always the worst ones. It happened in the Central Exchange Hall, a vast open space where species crossed paths under the careful balance of station law. Trade, negotiation, diplomacy. Everything here ran on carefully measured words. An argument broke out near one of the transit gates. Two alien delegates stood facing each other, voices raised just enough to signal escalation without crossing legal thresholds. Their dispute was about access rights, phrased in layered metaphor and indirect accusation. The crowd began to thin. Everyone knew where this led. Ethan stopped. Celera felt it instantly. Do not, she warned under her breath. I'm not doing anything, Ethan said. That was a lie. He stepped forward. Hey, he said, voice carrying farther than he intended. What's actually the problem? The delegates froze. One of them turned slowly. This does not concern you, human. Maybe not, Ethan replied. But you both look like you're arguing around the issue instead of about it. A murmur rippled through the onlookers. Celera's pulse spiked. This exchange follows protocol, one delegate said sharply. Then your protocol sucks, Ethan said, not unkindly. Because you're both angry, neither of you is listening, and everyone here knows it. Silence slammed down hard. Protocol officers began moving in, but too late. The other delegate laughed. Not politely. Not carefully. Actually laughed. He speaks plainly, the delegate said. Why? Ethan shrugged. Because it's faster. The argument unraveled after that. Once the truth was spoken openly, once intent replaced posture, the conflict collapsed. Access rights were renegotiated in minutes. The crowd dispersed in stunned quiet. Celera stared at Ethan as if seeing him for the first time. You bypassed 3 layers of diplomatic structure, she said. Did it work? Yes. Then maybe the structure's the problem. That moment spread faster than the rescue footage. Not because Ethan had solved a dispute. Because he had broken a rule no one else dared touch. He had spoken truth where truth was considered dangerous. The council responded within the cycle. Celera was summoned again, this time under formal directive. She stood alone in a chamber filled with shifting light and distant voices. The human must be relocated, one voice declared. He cannot remain here. He has violated no law, Celera replied. He violates expectation, another voice countered. He changes outcomes. That is not a crime. It is a risk. Celera felt something tighten in her chest. He does not manipulate, she said. He reveals. That is worse. Because revelation could not be contained. The decision was nearly unanimous. Ethan would be transferred off station. Not as a prisoner. As a precaution. When Celera told him, he surprised her. He nodded. Yeah, he said. That makes sense. You are not angry. No, Ethan replied. You can't keep a wildfire in a greenhouse and expect things to stay the same. That word, wildfire, lodged deep in her thoughts. I will not be escorting you, she said, her voice carefully neutral. I figured, Ethan said. Then, more softly, I'll miss you. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and the control she had rebuilt cracked just enough. Andalai do not express attachment easily, she said. I know. When you spoke to me, she continued, you did not see a role or a symbol. You saw me. That wasn't hard, Ethan said. You were right there. Her breath caught, just slightly. I wish, she said, that my people understood how dangerous that is. Dangerous doesn't always mean bad, Ethan replied. The transport was prepared quickly. Too quickly. As Ethan boarded the small human-rated vessel provided by the station, he felt the weight of eyes on him. Officials. Observers. Citizens. Some curious. Some unsettled. Celera stood at a distance. She did not wave. She did not look away. When the hatch sealed and the ship pulled free, something subtle but irreversible shifted inside Aurelian Station. Because now there was proof. Humans did not need weapons to alter civilizations. They needed proximity. They needed one honest sentence at the wrong, or right, moment. And that was something no alien system had ever learned to defend against. As Ethan's ship jumped to transit, council analysts reviewed the data one last time. Behavioral anomalies. Cultural acceleration. Emotional resonance beyond predictive models. One final note was added to the human species profile. Containment ineffective. Avoid prolonged exposure. High influence risk. Celera read that line later, alone. And for the first time in her life, she smiled without restraint. The council believed the problem had been solved. Ethan Cade was gone. The variable had been removed. Aurelian Station returned to order, to rules, to careful words and measured silence. On paper, everything stabilized. In reality, The damage had already spread. It began with small things. An Andalai technician paused before correcting a subordinate and chose to speak plainly instead. A trade mediator skipped a ritual phrase and asked a direct question. A junior officer ignored protocol for 3 seconds and stepped in to stop a conflict before it escalated. Nothing dramatic. Nothing illegal. But everything different. Celera noticed it immediately. She saw it in the way people hesitated before defaulting to tradition. In the way conversations became shorter, clearer, and, most unsettling of all, more honest. The station was still functioning, but the rhythm had changed. Humans called it progress. The council called it contamination. They initiated reviews, cultural audits, information suppression, training updates designed to reinforce restraint and re-establish distance from human behavioral patterns. It didn't work. Because humans had never taught anyone what to say. They had shown them how it felt to say it. And once that feeling existed, it could not be erased. Celera stood in the medical wing weeks later, reviewing patient files that no longer required her full attention. Her work was flawless, as always. Her reputation intact. But she was no longer invisible. Andalai noticed her now. Not as a symbol. As a person. She traced the seam of her uniform absently, remembering the moment she had frozen, when a human had seen her without translation, without framework, without fear. You look incredible wearing that. Not because of status. Not because of expectation. But because it was true. That sentence had followed Ethan beyond the station. Human channels picked up fragments of the council's internal assessments. Analysts argued. Sociologists debated. Military advisors grew uneasy. Humans had done this before. They had disrupted empires not by conquering them, but by standing next to them and asking inconvenient questions. Why is this the rule? Who decided that? What happens if we just don't? Ethan didn't return to Earth a hero. He returned to work. Another ship. Another job. Another edge of space contract. He didn't even know what had followed him from that station. He only knew that sometimes, when he spoke honestly, people listened harder than he expected. Months later, a message arrived. No official seal. No council signature. Just a single encrypted packet routed through human channels. Inside was a short recording. Celera stood in frame. No background, no insignia. Just her. I was not permitted to contact you, she said calmly. So I am doing it anyway. Ethan laughed softly when he heard that. You once told me dangerous does not mean bad, she continued. My people still debate that statement. She paused, then added, I no longer do. The message ended there. No goodbye. No explanation. But something in Ethan's chest settled. Across the galaxy, the effects multiplied. Joint missions with humans reported higher cooperation rates. Negotiations involving humans resolved faster. Conflicts de-escalated when a human was present, not because they enforced peace, but because they refused to hide behind ceremony. Alien civilizations adjusted their profiles. Humans, unpredictable. Humans, emotionally inefficient. Humans, socially destabilizing. And then, quietly, a final line began appearing in restricted documents. Humans, catalysts. They did not dominate. They did not rule. They reminded others of choices they had forgotten they were allowed to make. And all it took was one honest sentence, spoken without armor. You look incredible wearing that. Humanity never noticed the line it crossed. The galaxy did. And it would never be the same again.